everybody. Welcome to Navel Gazing, the Valley Indie podcast. This is a very special live episode of Navel Gazing. We're going to be talking to the Cassetti administration and Mayor Cassetti himself of Ansonia about some economic development issues that are happening literally in the heart of downtown Ansonia. First, I'll go around real quickly. To my left is Ansonia Economic Development Director and grant writer Sheila O'Malley. Hi, Sheila.
Hi, Eugene. Thanks for having us.
And then right below Sheila is Ansonia Mayor David Cassetti.
Hello, everyone.
Making a return appearance. And then last, certainly not least, as always, he's essentially a co-host to some extent to this podcast, Ansonia Corporation Counsel John Moridi.
Hey, Eugene. Thank you for having us again.
All right. So the reason I'm having this Ansonia roundtable at the moment, and if you're watching this, feel free to post comments. You might see a comment right now about this give money through, just ignore that. I haven't really been able to set some type of Facebook scam. But if you want to post comments or questions, keep them brief. And at some point during the broadcast, we'll bring them up because it's great if this is interactive. That's true transparency. So yesterday, the city of Ansonia posted a video of this building being torn down. And me being the ignoramus that I am, I wasn't sure exactly what it was or what it means for Ansonia. I mean, obviously, it's a good thing because I know in the middle of Ansonia, there are these heaping piles of former factories that aren't exactly doing anybody any good in their current condition. They've sat there, I think, like an albatross on the city's back for generations now, and it looked like yesterday we're seeing them come down. So I thought to have the Ansonia people on here to give us some context about what exactly is going on. So what was happening yesterday? Whoever wants to grab that.
Okay, you're right, Eugene. Buildings are falling down.
It's the former SHW that we've been working with. We acquired the property back a year ago from the owner, and what we're doing now is Sheila has applied for grants, and we received grants to demo that property. It took some time. I know a lot of people were anticipating it to happen a while back, but there was electric power going to that building, and we had to have it disconnected, and which we recently had done. So the bid was back in June for the demolition, but we didn't get started until yesterday. So we're very excited about the future of that area. We have many manufacturers calling us, asking us for space, and as you know, we have no space. Our space is that 60 acres of land down on the north end of Ansonia. So this is a start. Ansonia is on the verge of an economic explosion coming in the next few years.
And then Mayor Cassetti, explain to me, because I'm not born and raised in Ansonia, so I never saw that property when it was alive and kicking. Right, it's always been sort of invisible to me. Like I know it's there, but I've never taken a drone shot of it or been in an airplane to look at it. We're talking 60 acres. Like I know what is the 60 acres? Like how would you describe it to people? I know on the Main Street side across from the fire department, there's that big building. Is that part of it? Going up North Main Street, there's Ansonia Copper and Brass. How do you describe all of this? I find that confusing.
That land is northerly on Riverside Drive is Ansonia Copper and Brass. That's called the Woodlot, that area there. There was the area for the employees parking is where the more of Burns Construction and Coastal Carriers is. But that's the entrance to Ansonia Copper and Brass. But believe it or not, they had over 7,500 employees back right up into the mid 70s in the two factories of Farrell's and Ansonia Copper and Brass. And that SHW was originally Farrell's. It was sold off to SHW years ago, and then another developer had bought it, and then he sold it to us. But that's what that 60 acres comprises of. It goes as far as the north end towards 4th Street. You'll find canals there, a treatment plant, all different things in that area there.
And that's all part of this whole development
all part
plan.
Of the 60 acres.
But first, what you have to tear down stuff and clean up what's under the ground, I guess, or test, and then
that's where Sheila comes into play, where She has gotten us over $90 million since I took office. And she's worked very hard late into the night putting these grants together and getting this funding. And we are very fortunate to have someone like her.
Okay, let me just, Sheila, are you shaking your head? Did I say something wrong
No,
there?
no, I'm shaking my head because, well, after that introduction, I don't know how to live up to that, but no, I guess, what I would say is, yes, it's been a long process beginning with, and John could talk more about it, beginning with the acquisition of that property when, I think other communities would be reluctant or reticent to acquire the property, but yeah, it's been piecing the grants together. First, to assess what's on the site. Second, to clean up where necessary prior to demolition and to prep the site for demolition. And the third is obviously demolition, which is occurring now. So it's taken a while to piece together the funding sources, but we're finally seeing real progress forward with the demolition. That's when people physically see what's happening, but there's been a lot going on in addition to that, is what I would add.
And then I just wanted to share, I found right around Christmas, I, of course, had taken off, so sue me. But we were inundated with local governments getting, like the cash spigot seemed to open up from the federal, on the federal and state level. And of
Right.
course, just to point out, that's taxpayer money. Sometimes I think grants people forget that it's actually us paying the taxes that makes this stuff happen.
It is, but I say to people, would you rather that grant money go to a neighboring community or right back into your community where you already paid it out, bring it back in, so that's my answer too.
So this was one of the many press releases I received right around Christmas time, and if you can, I don't know, can you do that when I share it? It might be too small, but it says that this of all these grants, 500,000 in state funds from 2020 for the environmental cleanup and demolition of the SHW/Farrell site, and I'm assuming that's what started yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the 500,000 was what we used for assessment and cleanup. The 1 million for that we competed and won is for the demolition, startup of the demolition.
Okay, it says $1 million state funds 2021, $2 million state funds 2021 for the strategic future redevelopment of Ansonia copper and brass, $200,000 in state funds in 2022 for the anticipated additional assessment and planning after the SHW Farrell building, $2.9 million U.S. Congresswoman DeLauro secured in July 22, and then 6.5. There's been a lot of money. So is Ansonia at the point where this is fully funded? You're going to be able to... Go ahead.
Guys, the demolition for SHW is fully funded. So all of the buildings that are coming down are completely going to be demolished with federal and state funds. So that's that. I think they're shaking their heads because they're talking about Ansonia copper and brass.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, this is the tip of the iceberg here.
Right.
It's
Okay.
the tip of the iceberg in terms of the 60 acres. So you're talking about SHW, we're talking about a sliver, really, in comparison
4
to the
acres.
rest of the property, okay?
4 acres.
And that sliver is going to make a big difference. It's going to give us the ability to bring jobs and revenue into the city. But really, the final frontier, that's the full 60 acres of what was Ansonia copper and brass. And we need to continue pursuing funding, not just for demolition and remediation, but also what we've been very successful with is replacing aged and at this point decrepit infrastructure like the bridge that leads into the facility to allow commerce to flow. So there's a lot of challenges left, but there's also a lot of opportunity left. And that is probably the most useful diagram we have, the most useful map you have up on the
if
screen.
you would go through this, John, because I mean, again, I am a moron and I have trouble visualizing this stuff.
Oh, there's the property is really broken up into as you see a couple different parcels, several different.
Is this
parcels.
the entire
Not that
entire
easy.
Is this the entire 60 acres we're looking at right now?
You can't see it all there, but
Okay.
you can definitely see all of the SHW parcel, and that is highlighted in blue.
Okay, that's right
So if you
here.
take your cursor, and drag it around that area. So
Yep.
that's being demolished back from right to left up until that last building. You can sort of see that long building on the far left. If you go from the top to bottom, the length
this
of that
way?
building. No,
No.
so you're in the yellow area. If you stay
You're
in the
here.
blue area,
Okay.
go to the left, all the way to the left,
Yep.
and run your cursor up and down. That
This way?
portion will remain. Yep, that building will remain. Everything
Okay.
else from left to right is being demolished as part of this phase.
Okay. Do you know how long a demolition? So is the plan to redevelop this parcel first and then continue to get grant money to wreck the rest of the garbage that's there?
Exactly. The city certainly has waited long enough for economic regeneration. So the plan is to bring in commercial uses here, a manufacturer that Sheila could talk a little more about, to bring some jobs and revenue back. And as we've previously discussed at the Board of
And that's for the
Aldermen,
blue parcel. The blue parcel
exactly,
you're talking
yes,
about.
We're
Okay.
talking about the blue parcel right now. We're also talking about potential for revenue generators like fuel cell, clean energy that can generate pure dollars for the city to put into services, from education to infrastructure repair. And we're looking at this first phase as going forward as we continue to gather funds and support for the rest of the property. And it's all possible because of the city's willingness to take ownership, not just of this SHW parcel, but the full 60 acres. The only pieces that are not on the table are those portions you saw highlighted in yellow. And
I'll bring
that
it back up.
represents 2 former Farrell buildings that are under private ownership. And the good news is we have heard that you see
That's
the yellow?
this over here.
Yep, and for orientation purposes, those are the pieces that face out to Main Street. So, residents are probably very familiar with the building that says Farrell on it while they're driving to the end of Main Street.
That's 35
where
Main
we
Street.
are.
35
West
Main Street. And the other
Main
one is
Street.
1 West Main Street.
And you can see the police building in the bottom right-hand corner.
Bottom
that's
right.
what
Okay, gotcha.
That is. That's the new Ansonia Police Department.
Who owns those yellow buildings? I mean, the yellow area?
Yellow company
They were
called
just-
Yellow
Oh,
but they're
interesting. Okay.
currently in discussions to sell the property for commercial purposes. And that is, of course, very good news, given that those parcels have been tied up for some time. They were part of that whole kerfuffle involving Mustafa Diakati. Remember, he owned buildings up and down Main Street. He bought the former Farrell buildings, and there was, he's in jail now. Those properties were the last pieces of the Farrell buildings he bought that have been tied up in this really tricky situation, a question of who owns them. It seems that has been resolved, and it looks like a redevelopment plan is being put in place by the owners.
And then, Sheila, you had mentioned at the Ansonia Alderman meeting the other night, I believe, I stream sniped it. I stole your stream and put it on my Facebook page. So
Yep.
I didn't get a cease and desist. I was so happy. But during that meeting, I thought you said you could fill, maybe you were referring to that blue parcel, SHW, you could fill that 50 times over. What were you referring to when you said?
I could fill that 60-acre parcel.
Oh, the 6. Okay.
Three times over, including the rug pad building. But, they thankfully the 1 West Main Street looks like we have the private owners have a tenant for that building. But
1 West Main Street being the yellow portion that I just had
Yep,
on there?
the
Okay,
yellow portion
gotcha.
that's closer to the railroad tracks. But yeah, I mean, Eugene, weekly we get requests for a neighboring community, for Ansonia. We get requests for manufacturing and warehouse space. And we're left with these buildings or land when we finish demolishing that people are looking to, relocate and come to the valley. And they assume we have, because they look at the old buildings and the smokestacks and they assume we have space on that property. And unfortunately, the buildings are too dilapidated. Most of them are to reinvent.
And then with that blue section we're talking about, SHW casting, I guess, that's being destroyed as we speak.
Yeah.
Although I don't know what the weather's like. Mayor Cassetti, can they go out there and run the
Yes,
wrecking stuff
they're-
on a rainy day?
Yeah, because
Yeah,
they're out there working.
Okay, gotcha. So do you have a potential, like what has to happen? Do you have to put it out to bid? How does it work? How do you get that land back to the point where it's producing revenue in terms of taxes for the city of Ansonia? That section of the 60 acres.
We initially had an RFP because, the state was eager to get that process rolling and get an RFP. We did have one response. We're going to go back out, but back out to bid. And John could talk about this. We think it's more important for us to lease this property than to sell it, as it affords us more control over the property.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so we will be back out to bid for the lease of one of those buildings. We call it Building 12, which is going to be salvaged on that site. So we'll go back out to bid, and the state will be happy with that because they assume a manufacturer is going to take that spot, and we assume the same.
Now, the stereotype in local news, and maybe I'll direct this at Attorney Marini, is that government makes terrible landlords. So why would you want to hold on to that? Is that indefinitely you're going to have a lease over that?
That's an old school of thought.
Yeah, well, this 60 acres was the economic.
Please stop with the ageism. I'm only 48.
No, it's not.
I know, I'm just kidding.
I'm not saying that, but I am saying that's, that was true 20, 30 years ago, but I think
that's an old saying.
We need control. We need control. And
historically, this property was the economic engine for not just the city, but really the entire valley, right? Everybody knows someone who either worked there or their family worked there or their friends worked there. And when it went dark, years and years and years ago, it had a disastrous impact on the community, and the community has not recovered. We don't want that to repeat. We don't want to put all our eggs on one basket.
I'm sorry, let me just jump in. Are you talking about you would control the entire 60 acres or just this blue part, the SHW to start?
I mean, again, we own SHW right now. The rest of the parcel, excluding those Faro buildings in yellow, right? The rest of the parcel is under foreclosure for taxes. So the city will take possession of those buildings when that process is complete. Okay. Now we are looking at options to either hold directly the entirety of this part of the parcels, right? Or spin them off to a holding company or a development corporation. That way, there is control on behalf of the city residents of Ansonia. The worry is that by putting all your eggs in one basket, by selling this strategically vital property, you're basically taking the chance that history could repeat itself. You certainly would be getting a great windfall by selling to one or several manufacturers or business owners who could finish the redevelopment. But what happens when it goes dark again? What happens when the market changes? Will the property be once again held up indefinitely while speculators and property owners try to get the highest value? And in this situation, we've seen the disaster that causes. Might it be a better direction to create essentially an industrial commercial park whereby multiple parcels could be leased out for long-term, payments made to the city, and we have some security that if the market changes, if a business goes dark, that we could simply negotiate a new lease with a new company. Or again, it may not be directly the city, that may not be advisable, maybe a long-term development corporation that can manage this vital area. We're just not going to be willing to sell away one of the city's most absolutely vital assets.
And see it turn again into like a pile of horse dung. Gotcha. Okay, now is there anywhere else in the valley or the state of Connecticut where this approach has been tested and successful? Is there anything you're modeling this on? Because it sounds to me like almost the city is hoping to have this 60 acres as a permanent revenue generator, like directly, if you're the landlord. If you spin it off as an economic
if you're accepting pilot payments in lieu of taxes, or if you're accepting lease payments, then you're exactly right.
Is there any? Go ahead.
There's a lot of communities that have these districts whereby you're actually supplementing the money to create the districts through the taxes that are just contained in one small area. So they have these separate like TIF areas, if you will, tax incremental financing areas where, you know, you're leasing with the municipality. There's a lease arrangement. So yeah, there's lots of examples we can point to that that have similar situations in their redevelopment areas.
Is this something
So
that Shelton
essentially-
tried, like in down? I'm
Yes.
just, if we get a
Yes.
reference, it's okay, Shelton, like along the river and the slab.
Waterbury has tried it.
Correct. Waterbury, Naugatuck.
Waterbury Redevelopment Corporation is
Yep.
sort of a good example of a standalone organization that facilitates development and facilitates ownership
Right.
and productive use of properties on behalf of the city. And honestly, realistically, we do see this going in that direction. Of course, those are decisions for our legislative body to make, but I believe we would be recommending the creation of a redevelopment corporation to be able to control, to maintain the property into the future. But what a potential! You know, this is really doubling the downtown's capacity, capacity for revenue generations and jobs that the city simply needs to be able to move into the future.
And that's what you want to see there. This won't be a mix of housing, I guess. I mean, if you had to
Definitely
wave
not.
a magic wand, this is manufacturing, businesses, commercial use, things like that.
That's our recommendation in terms of housing, is that's the one use that we are not recommending. And that's simply because we have residents and housing in place already that need to be taken care of. We need reinvestment in our existing communities, in our existing neighborhoods, our existing infrastructure. The worry is that by increasing housing density even further, by adding more residential, we're just adding more to take care of. You know, we're at a point where we need revenue to reinvest back into what we already have. And I think we've been going strong in that direction. But this 60 acres is the potential really to take a much bigger step into the revitalization of the city
I think
and the
what-
entire area, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also driven by the requests. So we're getting 10-to-1 requests for manufacturing and warehouse space versus residential. And in addition to that, you're going to have to clean up to almost a cost prohibitive standard for residential in this area. It's zoned heavy industrial. It's likely to stay industrial commercial. And I think it just makes better sense for Ansonia at this point.
And then how much longer, or how long will it take the demolition process in this phase one, as you referred to it, for the SHW property?
Well, I
I might
talked
have
to
asked
the developer. I talked to the contractor yesterday. He told me it's going to take 2 months to take down SHW because, you know, he has to put barriers in the road on North Main Street to block off that one lane because they got to get the excavator in there to pull it down.
Yeah, you're
from-
not shutting
from
the lane
within.
down, though, but we won't be shutting the lane down. The mayor's right. We're blocking off the hazard, the safety lane or the safety.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, luckily, that's a wide road there.
Yes.
So let's take a look at the video you posted yesterday. Now that we have it in context and all that good stuff, of I believe it's 31 seconds of some destruction. See if I can find it. I'm going to share that. I'm going to make that turn on the sound, make that
Wow.
huge, and let's see. Hey, why isn't it playing? All right, there we go. Hey, look at that.
Good job.
That was the building coming down. If anybody's just joining us, it's Sheila O'Malley, the Ansonia Economic Development Director and grant writer, and then it's Mayor David Key and Ansonia Corporation Council John Marini talking about some teardowns that's been happening and the start of life being breathed into the 60 acres of heavy industrial heart of downtown Ansonia, and the long-term plan is to wreck the SHW building and then continue the acquisition of roughly how many acres of Ansonia Copper and Brass? You've got your foreclosing on them, right, John? So how many acres is that roughly?
54.
About
54.
54
Sorry, I'm not
acres.
John.
Yeah,
Sorry.
54, 55, 60 altogether. SHW is about how much, Sheila?
5 acres, 4.5 acres. So,
Okay, gotcha.
I mean, you're actually talking about 112 acres.
Wait a
because-
second. Come on, Sheila. No.
Yeah,
Wait, this is why it's so hard to cover this. It was 60
When
for
you
10
start
minutes.
talking about the Faro buildings, when you start
it's
talking
like-
about
it's-
some of the ancillary, structures, it's
you're
an
talking about the
enormous amount of space altogether.
railroad, the
Right.
tracks,
It's the
Eugene.
land
why
that
I
goes up
drink.
to the dam. There's
Okay.
land
And so
that
in
goes
terms
all
of
the
how
way
far
up to
this
that-
property goes back,
That's
the
right.
goes
mayor was
way
talking
back
about
to the dam.
the mayor was talking about how far this property goes back, right? So that's another big consideration. Our thought has been, as this property starts to come back online, is there a better way to make it accessible? And that's where the idea of opening the property up back up to Route 8. So extending a road from the property back towards the woodlot where the mayor was speaking, back up towards Nolan Field, and actually connecting it to Route 8 itself. To truly
Gotcha. Let's
open
hold
up
that for 1
main
second,
artery.
because there's a long comment not in the thread, but in the event page that Facebook set up. I'm not going to read it all because it's way too long, but I'll read the beginning of it. But wait, we have a comment from a viewer named Andrea Daly, who basically says, "Hey Driscoll, you're a moron. It's just a big corner. Stop." All right. Sorry, Andrea. It's a tough crowd. But all right. So this Route 8 thing, connecting to Route 8. Let's just read a question from somebody or a comment, and then go back to that. So this was from somebody named Jeff Barla. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. And this person is saying Franklin Street. This is in opposition to connecting to Route 8. Franklin Street already leads to Route 8. Building a new street through the woodlot's not sustainable. We have a housing crisis going on. It would require, according to this person to demolish 3 perfectly good residential homes in order to make this happen. And basically, this is saying a no to that. And I don't know if this has been taken into consideration, or if you ever read something like this. What's your response to that?
We've absolutely take that into consideration, and we don't have a layout for the road at this point. We're just talking about conceptual designs, and we're also talking about our Riverwalk, our extending the Riverwalk along that same path possibly. And we will be having public hearings on the Riverwalk alternate routes and where that's going to take us. And that sort of will run parallel, no pun intended, with the road, potential road design. So yeah, we're looking at all that. Mayor Cassetti hears the neighbors in that area. There are 3 residential homes. We are taking that into consideration, and hopefully we'll make everybody happy and whole.
And now, I mean, we're seeing the SHW portion of the property get wrecked starting yesterday, continuing today. How far off? I mean, sometimes it's hard to decipher if things are happening within the next year, or we're talking about a wish list of 30 years from now. How realistic, when would a road be put in to connect to Route 8? Is that something that's on a wish list at this point, or do you conceive it happening soon?
It's a concept at this point, and as we've seen with the process, you really never know. You have an idea of the order you'd like to accomplish things in, of what the plan is, but it's all about opportunities for funding. It's about, taking advantage of the right opportunities at the right time. With respect to the new road, I could say it's a concept. We want to hear back from the residents. We obviously want to hear back from anyone that it could potentially affect. It's certainly premature to say that, that concept is been engineered in any one particular way. It's very much up for discussion as to how it will be executed. So it's hard for us to give you a timeline at this point as to when things would be up for, finalization and implementation. Number one, we need the property, right? We need the rest of the property. So that needs to happen. And so does the rest of the demolition and remediation.
The road is down the road.
Yep, but the
Potentially.
road is
Good
down the
one.
road.
That's a
Thank
good
But
you.
one.
obviously,
So I get
again,
paid the
Ansonia
big
has
bucks.
waited enough. The residents have waited enough. Our priority is to achieve revitalization and redevelopment, jobs and revenue. The city and the area desperately need and deserve it. We're going to do it in a way that is considerate, of course, of our residents. We want to mitigate, minimize any negative impact that is absolutely vital for us. And I can speak for our Board of Aldermen and, of course, the mayor, absolutely vital to them as well. Anything we do, we want to lessen any sort of negative impact to anyone in the surrounding area.
And Herb Smith, wait, let's get Herb Smith in here. Herb Smith commented 5 hours ago in this discussion thread. This is in terms of what's being done today of the teardown. This is exciting news as long as it doesn't break the bank for Ansonia. I think we talked about how this is grant money that's paying for this. My only hope is that they salvage some of the more historic buildings and pay respect to the historic importance of that site. I mean, Ansonia is named after the original industrial owner.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So in part of the demolition process here has been to work with SHPW, that division of the state that regulates demolition of historic properties.
They got to check it out before you do anything, right? Isn't that what
Yep,
happens?
exactly.
Gotcha.
There needs to be an approval to bring down structures of historic significance. So some buildings on the overall site will be preserved. The aim is to save them rather than to necessarily tear them down. And also working with SHPO, there are going to be other ways to mitigate the historic loss of the site as we regenerate it. And one of the interesting elements here actually ties into the Opera House. Part of the package that the city is
nice
recommending.
segue.
Yep, for mitigation, right? So part of the mitigation plan that we're proposing for the demolition of some of these structures on SHW is actually the revitalization of the exterior of the Ansonia Opera House. And as you know, we've entered into a long-term lease with the owner that is in fact the intention of the city to help in any way with the exterior and interior revitalization of that historic structure. It is only, very, very close, less than a quarter mile away from the demolition site. And so these two projects could actually find themselves working in tandem with each other. And we could be seeing the exterior renovation of the Opera House end up actually helping to unlock the progress on SHW.
Good. Okay. Is there anything else anyone wanted to add about the 60 acres that you're tackling and trying to bring back to life before? Because while I have you, I had a couple of other subjects I wanted to, of course, spring upon you unrehearsed. I want to talk about, of course, what's the latest with the big Y open space down there at the whatever that is, north end of Main Street or south end of Main Street?
Eugene.
And then, wait, hold on. And then I wanted to talk about very briefly, I know you're trying to acquire grant money to change the Armory into a community center. And then thirdly, a little bit about crime and the surveillance system that you had ideas about. But before we move that, and this won't go on for an hour, is there anything else you wanted to add about this redevelopment project or initiative? Are we good?
It's been one of the mayor's chief priorities for, since he was first elected, right back 10 years ago. We knew that was going to be the biggest challenge, but really the biggest opportunity for the city of Ansonia to tackle Ansonia Copper and Brass, SHW really being a part of that. So, we are very excited to be getting to this phase.
Yeah, and the goal is to create more space. Keep going. Demolish, renovate, keep going. Yeah.
And I mean, the residents should know all of this has one bottom line, and that is the people of Ansonia, the residents of the city of Ansonia. All of it is to achieve enhancement of services, enhancement of their city.
Okay. And then, all right, Mayor Cassetti, let's travel up Main Street, and you'll make a left out of your office, and we'll come to Big Y. What used to be Big Y until the Big Y. I don't know. I got a personal grudge against Big Y. They said they weren't moving out. No, we're not leaving. No,
Yeah,
and then they ran out of town. They almost had me like I got actually I won't. They yelled at
Their
me.
lease is all up, and now it's up to the owner to bring somebody in. He has been in negotiations and talking with Sheila on certain things that she could answer that, because they do have something that's possibly going to pop up.
It's obviously a commercial center. We're going anti-Big Y. Only kidding, Big Y.
Not anti-Big Y, just anti the conversation. But yes,
Oh,
we are talking about we are talking to the owner about potential tenants.
and obviously, I mean,
we've been in regular contact with the owner, with the owner ever since Big Y left. And I think the bottom line is this: the owner, and we agree with him on this, is looking for the highest and best use of the property. So he is not about to just allow any tenant to occupy this space. It needs to be a legitimate anchor.
And you can't dictate what goes in there because it's America and there's a separation. It's private property.
Obviously, the city can say, "Look, we're not supportive of something if it seems to be bogus or something that wouldn't be a good fit for the city." We could certainly put our opinion in and make it known, right? The mayor's not afraid to do that. We're not afraid to do that. But we agree that until he finds the true quality tenant, it's better to wait. So
let me play devil's advocate for 1 second, though, because I guess Big Y allegedly had their lease was sort of pointed to as maybe holding this thing up, but at the same time, the owner knew he had this lease. How come there wasn't someone lined up? There's so many people who want to go in there, or so many entities that want to go in there. You think once the lease was up, somebody would go right in. Why hasn't that happened?
Because I think it's timing. With respect to the tenants, they want maybe a year ago we're ready to go in, and now now that the lease is freed up, the timing doesn't work exactly right with the new potential tenant.
Gotcha. So there's a dance that takes place.
Yeah, we can't speak entirely, of course, or at all, really, for the owner. But
that's Caldor right now contacting Sheila O'Malley wanting to move in. All right, let's move on.
I was going to say, the changes in the market after COVID have made things a little more uncertain for larger franchises. So a large franchise that was looking to expand into the area may be just taking things a little slower right now, and we believe that may be part of the holdup here.
Gotcha. And how about in terms of this idea to convert, if you got grant money, the Armory into some type of community center? Sheila's muted. Or she's cursing me out. You're muted, Sheila. She's talking to somebody. Okay.
So we put Eugene an application in for further funding
That's okay.
The Armory. So we put an application in for further funding for the Ansonia Armory, with the idea of establishing a community center in connection with some of our very strong community groups like TEAM. And part of the idea here is that we have various organizations that could utilize the space to serve the public, TEAM being really at the forefront. And they showed through David Morgan a potential interest in the kitchen that is available in the lower levels of the Armory that has been essentially offline for years and years and years. And so the thought started.
Let me just interrupt for 1 second. Sheila, if you have to go, my next question's about crime. So feel free to duck out. You have work to do.
I think
you're not like Marini, who's he's got all day to talk.
And I'm going to take the mayor with me. But yeah.
No, you can't take the mayor. I need 5 more minutes with the mayor because I want to ask about crime left.
Okay.
Sorry, John, finish up your thought.
So, I mean, the quick answer is we think it would be a wonderful direction for the Armory. Basically, working off of the boost that Griffin Hospital gave the city, putting a good amount of funds into the property to revitalize the gym area. And this is, we think, a sensible next step is to do a revitalization of the upper levels and lower levels, allow community organizations to collaborate with the city of Ansonia to offer services directly to the residents in a centralized hub, so to speak. And the Armory.
Okay, gotcha. And you're in the grant application process at this point. Okay, gotcha.
Exactly.
All right, last subject, and I'll let you go. And thank you all for staying with me during this. I don't see any questions coming in, but I'm sure people will watch this once it's up, although it is streaming live. But all right, crime. There has been, I've been in the Valley for I don't know how long now. We do have in Derby and Ansonia our share of shootings. I don't really get the sense that it's always sort of constant, in my opinion, and just someone who's covered the communities for the last 13 years or so. But in December 2021, there was a couple of incidents off North Main Street in Ansonia, and there was this talk of doing surveillance cameras of some kind, shot spotter or something like that. It was very early in a discussion. It's been a year, and then I guess it came up again last month and last night at the Board of Aldermen. And I guess my first question is, to play devil's advocate, why did it take so long from that initial idea in December 2021? It's still sort of in the formation process, it feels like.
We wanted to make sure we got the best camera system there is. We don't want to get a Home Depot camera. We want cameras put up on our north end, our west side, our east side, that are sophisticated cameras that will clue in on what's needed. We had to get prices on fiber to bring fiber through the telephone poles and everything. So it's taken, that's what's taken so much time, because I want the best system, the best security system that a city could have.
Okay, so this is like the pre-game research, that's been going on.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what's been going on since that time, has been the research. And what needs to be understood is we're not just talking about buying some cameras. We're talking about the potential need for upgrades to the system that makes those cameras work in the way they need to work. And again, not just to be a camera, but to be a shot spotter, to be able to be a plate reader. What I'm talking about more specifically is fiber, the fiber network that needs to support a sophisticated camera like that in multiple areas of the city. And so our homework had to begin there. Not just what kind of cameras would we like and where, but how do we make sure our fiber system is upgraded and where we need it in the areas of the city where we need it. And it began with a conversation about technology, with vendors taking a look at our existing system and how it may be improved. And then, of course, it shifted to budget. You know, how do we break this up in a way?
Yeah, I don't know. Do any small cities like Ansonia have a system like this? You hear about it in the large
bigger cities.
The bigger cities, yeah, but how about? But they have more money, more grants. Do you think you'll be able to have the money to pay for a system like this?
I mean, absolutely. You know, where there's a will, you know, we've shown that there's a way. It's about breaking it up into sensible phases. So we hit problem areas first, you know, strategically significant areas first, and move on. And that's exactly where we are in the process, trying to determine what a realistic first phase is and get implementation as soon as possible.
Okay, and then Mayor Cassetti, I sense you have things to do. You got people pulling at your collar right there.
All the time.
Is there anything you want to say in terms of time? Is there anything you want to say to the residents of the city of Ansonia about this subject?
I made a promise when I first was elected back in 2013 that I want to rebuild Ansonia. Ansonia is on the cusp economically of growing even bigger. This Ansonia Copper and Brass, I've talked about it the last 3 terms, and finally things are starting to happen. Getting help from the federal government and Rosa Dolores' office helping us tremendously. Jorge Cabrera helping us in the state, and us getting these things, the funding that we need so that we can take care of it. You know, yeah, SHW is a start, but my Ansonia Copper and Brass I want to focus on, because I want to bring jobs and manufacturing here at Ansonia. That's what people need in Ansonia. That's what I sit on that balcony or stand on that balcony and I meet people that come into City Hall. Jobs, jobs, jobs. That's what I'm about. And that's what I want to try to get for the people of Ansonia in the next few years.
And then in terms of crime, some of the crime that's been happening in the surveillance system, what would should people, are they less safe, more safe than they were?
People are more safe than they ever were. These are random people. I mean, they're letting criminals out of jail and giving them a free pass. I mean, these are people that are coming back for revenge. Listen, I'm very proud of our Ansonia Police Department. We caught people up at Colony Park that were dealing fentanyl, a large quantity amount. We caught them, arrested them. We arrested the person that fired the shots on Bridge Street. Things are moving forward. I mean, the police are doing their job based on having their hands tied from the Accountability Act and everything that's occurred. But they're doing their job, and I'm very proud of what they're doing to the city of Ansonia. I'm proud of Chief Williams. He's really, really working hard. And we're at full staff with officers and our brass.
Okay, let's end it on that note. I want to thank you, Mayor Cassetti, for taking the time,
Thank you
making
for
a
having
return
me.
appearance. I appreciate it. John Marini, thanks as always for being so open and so willing to talk, and to Sheila O'Malley for coming on, and for Andrea Daly, thanks for your question. I appreciate it. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Eugene, for having us on, for letting us talk, and thanks for everybody who was watching and submitting any questions or comments.
Thank you.
All right. Peace, everybody.
Thank you.